All right, welcome everybody. If you have a property that you would like me to do a CMA on, an address, that sort of thing, just for, to see what's going on, go ahead and put it in the chat, the address, and I'll do a CMA. I use it as an example. Otherwise, I don't know, I'll do something else. But if you've got one, not too hard, maybe, but if you've got one, go ahead and chat it. Right? I assume you guys can hear the sound of my voice. All right, I got one. All right, and you have to tell me what city it is in, if that would be okay. I've got a couple. All right, but again, Lincoln, California. All right, that's possible. And Hilltop is in what city? L-A-H, La Habra, and I don't know. Not sure what that city is. Los Altos Hills. Okay. All right. I give that. That makes now that you say that makes perfect sense. Okay. So I'll pick one or all of those, and we'll see how it goes. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's a little weird. All right, so today, right, what we're going to talk about is what I refer to as the art of the CMA. And I call it an art because it's more of an art than it is a science, right? And there's a couple of handouts and things like that. But one of the things that is important, so this is how this usually ends up. Right? You've been marketing, you've been talking to people, you've been networking, you've been doing stuff, and you get a call, right? And the call is, hi, I saw your whatever, we're thinking about selling our house, and we'd like to talk to you about, what is it worth and that sort of thing. Now, before you hang up, right, what you're going to want to do is ask them some questions. Right? How, when, where, why, what, all that sort of stuff. So I've given you a copy of a lead sheet, which gives you some of the questions, but I have to admit, I don't actually use the lead sheet because I kind of know what the questions I'm going to ask them are, but you're going to want to ask them some questions, right? And this is another sample of a sheet that was done by somebody else, where, why are you moving? What is your optimal time frame? And other questions about the property and, must-have information. So what I do on the phone is I have a series of questions. Number one, and I say, great, that's wonderful. I'd love to help you, sell your home. Number one question is, why are you thinking of selling your home at this time? What's going on? Why are you thinking of selling your home at this time? Now, the answer to that question is going to tell us a lot about the seller's motivation. If their answer is something like, well, we have a job change, we have to move to some other place within a certain period of time, and we need to get there, that's motivation, right? If you hear, well, our daughter is having her first child, our first grandchild is being born, and they're in Arizona, and we want to be there, and we want to move there, and all that kind of stuff, that's motivation. If they say, well, we really, don't know, we're wondering, what our property might be worth and what we could get if we sold it. Yes, and that's a very different level of motivation, right? So why are you thinking of selling your home at this time? Then the other question that I typically ask is, would you please describe your property to me? Tell me about it, describe it to me, any improvements that you've done, let me know. Now, that's an oftentimes overlooked question. And I was coaching, mentoring an agent, and she had met a seller and had made an appointment. And the idea is that we were going to go together, and she was going to do the CMA, right? And I was going to get them to sign the listing agreement, right? That was how we were dividing up the labor. So she does the CMA on the property. She did not ask him that question. Right, did not ask him. right, to describe the property or what any kind of, tell me about any improvements that you've made. So she runs a CMA based upon what the tax records say, which is that this is a 3-1 of about 1,200 and something square feet. Okay? So she's run a CMA. We show up, this is not a 3-1, it's a 5-3, and it's closer to 3,000 square feet. Why the difference? Well, they had done some work without the benefit of permits. Right now, of course, the CMA is worthless. Now, what I did, because I've done this before, is when they said, well, are you going to tell us what our house is worth? I say, well, we're professionals. And if you hired a professional appraiser, they wouldn't just write down a number the moment they saw it. For an agent to come up with a value without even having seen your property, that's not really that professional. So what I'm going to do is we're going to, now that you've showed us the property and we can really see what you've got, we're going to go do some research and we're going to, give you an estimate, right? He bought it, right? Because we didn't tell him that we had done a CMA on a property that he doesn't own. Now, by the way, in that particular case, one of the things that you're going to want to have on your phone, and this is true for working with buyers and sellers, is the RPR, the Realtors Property Resource. You're going to want to have that mobile app on your phone. Because while we were talking to him, I click on it, and it, by the way, is the GPS based, and I'm looking at comps in the neighborhood, and I see that just a couple of doors down is another 5-3 that was done without permits. It's about the same square footage and about the same age. And so by the time we were done, I was estimating 1.2 is what I said to him, and he liked that number, right? And by the way, it eventually sold for 1.22, right? So if you don't ask them to describe the property and you're relying on what the tax records say, you may be running a CMA on a property that they don't have anymore. Now, by the way, just to answer the question in advance, because agents always ask me this, they say, well, if we listed it, how should we put it in the MLS? Should we put it in as a 3-1 with 1,200 and something square feet? How many bedrooms should we put down? 3, that's what it says in the county records, or 5. And this is my answer. If you're one of mine, right, one of my Padawans, and you call me with that question, I'm going to ask you this. When you walked through the house, how many bedrooms did you count? 5. How many bathrooms were there? 3. Put that down. Now, sure, we're going to mention someplace that this may have been done without the benefit of permits, but it doesn't make any sense to market the property as a 3-1 under 1,300 square feet when it's a 5-3 over 2,800 square feet. Yeah. Then I get asked the question, what's an appraiser going to do? Right? When the appraiser sees the property, what are they going to do? Are they going to appraise it for a 3-1? That's what the permitted additions are, or a 5-3. And again, I'll ask the question, when the appraiser walks through the house, how many bedrooms is the appraiser going to see? 5. How many bathrooms? 3. The appraiser is going to appraise it as a 5-3. Will they note that it may have been done without permits? The answer is yes. But that doesn't mean it's worth the same as a 3-1, right? So you need to ask him that question. You might want to know, so anyhow, those are really the important ones. Why are you selling? Describe your property to me, right? Any improvements that you've made, let me know. Now, you might want to ask them, if you have a loan, do you know what your loan balance is? I also ask people on the phone, I say, well, I assume you've been paying attention to what's been going on in your neighborhood, right? And a lot of people say, oh, yeah. Great. Do you have an idea of what your property is likely to sell for? And sometimes they'll just blurt out a number, right? That's a good thing, right? Because now we know what number they would like, to sell it for. Sometimes they'll say, no, I'm not going to tell you. That's your job, right? You have to come and tell us what you think the property's worth, right? So I'll say, okay, great. Ask them a few more questions. By the way, do you owe any money on the property? Do you know what your outstanding loan balance is? Let's say they tell me. If they've talked to me about motivation, and their motivation is that they're going to buy another property, let's say, in another area after they sell this one, I'll ask them, is there a certain amount of cash that they're interested in walking away with from the sale of this property before they buy the other one. How much, a certain amount they're looking to net. Now, I've had people refuse to tell me what they want to sell the property for, but they'll tell me how much their existing loan is and how much they want to net in order to buy the other property. That plus an app from the title company or a calculator would allow you to determine what the sales price needs to be. I'm just saying. By the way, another thing you need to have on your cell phone is a title company app that computes net sheets and things like that. Right? If you haven't got one, find a friendly title rep. I think you're going to find most of them are, kind of friendly, and ask them if they have a mobile app and practice with it. Right? I can do this while I'm talking to somebody because I've done it before. But if you've never done that, they may ask you by the end of your presentation, how much are we likely to net from the sale of our property? And you're going to need a better answer than I don't know. I don't know what that is. No idea. All right. So the CMA, which of course all of you understand stands for the Country Music Awards. Maybe that's not right. Or a comparative market analysis, something like that. You want to have some sort of confidence. Now, you don't want to be overconfident because I'm telling you, you have no idea what the property is likely to sell for unless it's a cookie cutter kind of a thing, right? Like sometimes condominiums and townhomes, you can find a bunch of sales recently that are exactly the same square footage in the same general part of the complex, and we have an idea what it's going to sell for. Right, but if you go beyond that, where you're dealing with resales and they've been remodeled and none of the homes look alike anymore, it's not quite that easy to be confident, right? So one of the things you're going to want to know is the inventory, and you're going to have to be able to compare their property to the competition, and you need to have an idea what the likely buyer is going to be, and you might want to practice, some of the scripts and things like that. Now, if you're using KV Core, which is the program that EXP agents use, and there are others, you might want to put them into the system, right? Add them to your database. You might want to launch a seller campaign. And sometimes we actually send them a pre-listing package in advance, which I'll talk about. That does not include the CMA, right? But it's more of a general thing about information about marketing plans and things like that, and statistical information. I can show you how to generate some of that very quickly. And you might mail it to them, email it to them, depending on how you're going to do it. Get the tax information, we'll talk about that. Analyze the MLS, and we're going to actually go into the MLS, and I'm going to do one of these. You might want to check it out on Google Earth, right, to see what's around it so you get an idea. Flight path, dumps, floodplains, busy streets, anything like that. You might want to get all of the paperwork ready. Fill out the listing agreement, get them into the into zip forms as parties, and you can do that through RPR. Will allow you to import information. You want to be ready. So they might say, well, that sounds good. How do we get started? And in which point, you might want to, just send it to them. And by the way, until we get there and until we have a conversation with them, one of the questions that I ask, by the way, on the phone is, besides tell me what you think your home is likely to sell for, which they may or may not do, I'll ask them the question, so just so I get an idea where you are in the process. Are you planning on listing your home with me when I'm there and, getting ready to put it on the market? Are you planning on doing that? Right? Now, some agents are scared of asking that question because they might say no, they might say, I don't know, they're scared to answer. I've had people say, well, yeah, of course I plan on signing the listing. That's why I'm calling you and asking you to come over, so that you can, fill out the paperwork, right? I learned to do this because one time I was at a seller's house and I was doing my presentation, and the guy looked kind of distracted, right? And he would get up from the kitchen table and he'd say, "No, keep going, you're doing great." And then he was in doing like dishes, while I was talking to him, and when I reached a point where I was breathing, he looked at me and he said, "Are you going to need a key tonight?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Good, I had some made." You understand, he didn't want to hear the whole thing, right? He wanted to sell the house. All right, so pricing strategy. Price is not a fixed concept. Even iPhones and Teslas, which are somewhat hard cost items, have sales, right? One of the things that you need to talk about is don't talk about the price so much, but talk about the pricing strategy, right? Because it's hard to predict the price, but we have some control over the strategies, right? Because who really determines what the price is going to be? And the answer is buyers do, right? Ultimately, and we don't have complete control over that, but we could have a strategy. All right. So what do you suggest? Now, how do you suggest the price? So let me take one of the people that was, I have to find it now. Where is it? Right, here we go. All right, so I'm going to take the sheet. Those things are in the handouts. If they're not there, then you're going to have to, try and get them from me. If you're a member of my team, if you're somebody I'm mentoring, if you're somebody I'm coaching, you have access to not only that, but a whole bunch more. So I've taken that address that I was given, and the way I'm going to start is I'm just going to paste it into Google, right? And what I'm looking for is, first of all, I'm going to look and see what does Redfin, we're going to start with Redfin. What does Redfin say? Redfin says it's 373,122. Right? That's what Redfin says, right? This looks like it's like a condo or a townhouse, right? Which are sometimes easier, right? Now, what I would do is, here, Saul's got one. I'll do, if it's a condo or a townhouse, it may be a lot easier because there's going to be a lot of others that look just like it, right? I'm going to click on realtor.com. And sometimes realtor.com has an estimate 342. So Redfin thinks it's 373 and realtor.com thinks it's 342, right? And then I'm going to click on Zillow, and Zillow is going to tell me they think it's 450, right? That's what Zillow says. Now I'm actually going to put those numbers in my CMA, right, in the cover sheet, and I'm going to do it and I also throw in what RPR says, right, and I might as well do this one, but then I may do another one. This was another property that somebody wanted, and I wasn't going to do it because it was a condominium, and they're not that difficult because there's oftentimes the same price, but let's just go with this one. All right. So once I drop it into RPR, RPR has their own valuation model of 358. So I'm actually going to say 358 is what this is called, the realtor's valuation model. I actually have it titled on a page, automated valuation models. And I tell them Redfin says this, Zillow says this, and realtor.com says that, and RPR, which is used by real estate agents, says this number. And by the way, what I typically will do, I might as well do this now because we're having so much fun, is I will open, oops, wrong Google, bad Google. All right, how about this one? So what I typically would do is I might say, and I'll create a spreadsheet, and I might say RPR, Redfin, Zillow, Realtor, and then I would look at this and I would say, all right, what's the, let me find it, 358, 630, right? 358, 630. And then Redfin says 373. Sometimes you can, I'm extremely lazy when it comes to these things. So I'll just copy and paste that in as values only, right? And then what does Zillow say? What does Zillow say? Zillow says 450, good for Zillow. Right? Zillow thinks it's worth more. And I'm going to, paste that in. And then what's one? Realtor.com thinks it's worth 342. And I'm going to paste that in. And then I'm going to tell it that this is, numbers of these are dollars, and get rid of the decimal places. Oops, going the wrong way. How about like that? Because we don't need that. And then I might say average, and I will go up to the different formulas, and I would go to this function, and I'm going to say average, and I'm going to try that and hit enter. All right. And yes, I'm going to copy that and put it into a Google document, which has my information at the top and the header and the footer. And I'm going to show this to them. Now, why am I doing this? Right? Is it because I think that these automated valuation models are particularly accurate? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, but we can't escape the fact that most of the buyers that are going to be looking at your home are going to be doing it on Redfin, Zillow, or Realtor.com. And so when they see your home on those sites, automatically they're going to see that estimate, right? We should at least pay attention to what it is. And RPR is what real estate agents are going to see when they start, the first number they're going to see when they start analyzing your property. Now, your property may be worth more than that, but I'm just saying that's something we ought to know, right? So I actually include that just because, did I do Zillow wrong? Somebody's just helping me. Thank you, guys. I guess that's what you're doing. All right, I don't know. So let me move that down. The other things I'm probably going to do is a quick CMA. And I realize that if you're in a different MLS, it's different than the software that I'm using, but all of them, you're using probably Paragon, Rapatoni, or Matrix, right? Those are the three big ones in California, or CRMLS has their own like little, weird one. But they all will eventually do this because you can export it, but I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So here is what Matrix looks like. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to active, pending, and sold. If I know what kind of property it is, like for example, Redfin is, I don't know what kind of property, that looks like a townhouse to me. But we'll figure it out. And I'm going to do one of the ones that was suggest a different one in a second, just to give you a little variety. But what I'm going to do is where it talks about map, I'm going to, whoops, wrong one. What I'm going to do is take the address. This is the Hudson Circle in Lincoln. This is the one in Lincoln. For some reason, I thought I was doing Los Altos Hills, but anyhow, I'll do that next. I'll do a couple of them just so you can see. And I'm going to paste the address in here without the word save, right? And then if it's a condominium or townhouse or something, 1/4 of a mile, and I want to see everything that's happened in the last 90 days, there's 10. Now, what I'm going to really pay attention to is this is a 3-3. Right, and it's 1698 square feet. So when I look at this, I'm going to click on results, and I'm looking over here. Here are 3 ones. I don't really see an exact match, but here's one on Hudson that's a 3-3, 1,500 square feet. Notice that none of these are matching perfectly, right? They're not. Which if this were a condo or townhouse, oftentimes there would be. This is a little bit bigger, but anyhow. So this is everything that's within 1/4 of a mile. Now, when we do a single family home, we may not find that many that are within 1/4 of a mile. right? We may not. But what I'm going to do, and some of these are way bigger and some of them are way smaller, but what I'm probably going to do just for fun is I'm going to click on all of these and I'm going to click on Quick CMA. And what the Quick CMA is going to do is give me a somewhat instant what's active, pending, and the number I'm really looking for is there's only been 2 sales, and they sold for an average of $215 a square foot. So in my, and maybe if I, since this isn't, let me go back to criteria. This is, I'm going to go down here and clear the map. I'm going to type in the city of Lincoln. Is this a single family home, a condo, or a townhouse? I'm still not sure. That looks like a townhouse, right, to me. Although I'm not familiar with that as much. That looks like, I don't know. Frankly, is this a condo or a townhouse? I think it's a townhouse. All right, great. So that's all, because I would have had a conversation with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say townhomes in Lincoln last 90 days. And we're going to, is that true? That there is, so Lincoln may not know the difference between condos, 12, all right? And so I'll look at those results. So here are all of the condominiums and townhomes, and sometimes in different MLSs, they don't know that well, which one is which. But what I'm going to do is I want to see what, oops, back. It's not, you clicked on the wrong box. I want to do a quick CMA. And what I'm going to do is I want to determine on average, what are the dollars per square feet that people are getting. They're getting 248. So one of the things that I'm going to do in my, when I'm doing the CMA is, oops, so let's say 248, let's just do that. And this is how many square feet? 1698. And so this number equals that number times that number. And 421 is what we get at the average dollars per square foot that people have been getting for condos or townhomes in Lincoln. Now, I'm doing that because I'm doing all this because, especially if this is a competitive thing, we're just going to want to make ours look a little bit better, right? And we just want to make it look a little bit better. So what else do we have? There's also, if we know the address of the property, we could go back to MLS listings, right? And what we want to do is, go to Pro. There we go. Realist. And different MLSs have different programs for this. But I'm going to pop in the address. And so, and by the way, this is something I typically would print out and include. It's got information about the property. Notice they have their own, usually, real AVM 358, real AVM range. Confidence score of 64 is not that great, but this is sort of what it's doing based upon tax information. And so the difference between realist and what the MLS just did is that this would be looking at things that just transferred title, right? Whether or not they were on the MLS or not. And so I might look at this, I might print it out, but notice they're giving us a range. Now, what's happening by now, and you might have figured this out, is that these numbers are all over the place, right? That Zillow and Redfin, they all have different numbers, which is back to my point that pricing is not necessarily a fixed thing, right? You understand? It's not a fixed concept, right? Different people will disagree. So now that I've done that, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to be making something that looks nice to send to the clients. So I'm going to go and create a CMA. Right now, one of the reasons that I want to run Realist, the MLS. Now, this one is, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around a lot. I hope you guys are following me. This is when I ran what was happening within a quarter of a mile, right? And if I don't find enough, I might go out to a half of a mile. Just in case you missed that, let me show you what I mean, right? So just in case you missed it. And I'm going to go out a little bit further because typically, and sometimes the difference between a condominium and a townhouse is debatable, right? Actually, there is no legal definition of a townhouse. There's a PUD, a planned unit development, which is where you have a property that has land underneath it, but it's a common interest development like a condominium. Normally, when we use the term townhouse, we being real estate agents, we're referring to a design of a building that's 2 or more floors, right? So depending upon how the information is coded in the MLS, it could be coded as a condominium, which is why I'm just throwing it in. Now, if I happen to know, and I'm going a little fast in this, if I happen to know that this is a 2-story, right, or 3 stories, then I might actually put that in the criteria in order to make sure that I'm looking for something similar, right? But what I want to do is I'm going to go back here to this map, right, and I'm going to click on it, and a mile is too far. A quarter of a mile for the last 90 days. I'm using what's called the status change date. Depending on the software you're using, it might be more complicated than that, but some of you are using Matrix, some are using CR/MLS, some are using Rapatoni, some are using Paragon. You need to learn how to use the MLS software. That just gives me 5 matches. If I go out a half of a mile, I still only have 5 matches. All right. So normally I don't want to go further than that unless there really isn't anything, right? And without looking at this from the sky, I don't really know why. But I want to see what those properties are, right? And these are Metro List, and BE means Bay East. Those are the different MLSs they're from. And notice here are very similar. Notice 1520, 1520, 1151. Those all look like standard townhomes in that subdivision, but we are a little bit bigger, right? Now, I might, and I'll just do this because I'm, curious. So what I might do, knowing that this one is a slightly different configuration, where's the MLS? Go back here, right? I'm going to go back here and open this in a new tab. I might do a search, residential, everything, condo or townhome in the city of Lincoln. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in that square footage, 1698, because usually, notice there's 46. If we're talking about townhomes and condominiums, those square footages don't vary so much, right? There's a certain number of models, and I'm interested in seeing when was that. So let's say 180 days. Are there any? No matches in 180 days. Ooh, 0 minus 365, no matches. All right. So I'm probably going to let it rip anyhow and see what it is, because I may want to be able to tell them when was the last time their model came on the market, right? Now, because they may know that. Right, and so now I know that 101004 Hudson, that's not the same one, is it? No, right, 1004 Hudson canceled, right? They tried 3, and the last one that sold is probably this one here, because this is usually done based upon time and price and time are kind of similar. So I would click on it. And when did it sell? It sold for $310 back in 2019. So in other words, when I'm having a conversation with the seller, I'm going to say, well, as you know, from the market analysis I'm doing, that the ones that have sold recently are not exactly the same model as yours. You have a bigger model. You just need to understand that it hasn't actually sold since 2019. That was the one over on Leap Year Loop, right? You may have remembered that if you were living here. You understand we're going to want to know, when did the last sale of their model occur, right? And I would look at it. By the way, does this help us? Knowing that it closed escrow back then, it was originally sold probably back in October, right, 21st. 2019 for $310. Is there any way we could use that information today? Well, let me ask you this. Is it possible for us to determine back in October of 2019 what the median and average price for a condominium townhouse? This has got it listed as a condominium. Townhouse, I would throw them both in. Is it possible for us to determine what the median and average price was back in 2019 October? And the answer is yes. There's evidence for that. Is it now possible for us to determine what the median and average price is today for a condominium or townhouse in the city of Lincoln? The answer is yes. So by knowing what it was average back then and what is the average now, we could come up with a factor. And this, by the way, is a bonus. This isn't in my list of the 5 ways of valuing property. This is a bonus because you guys were so nice to participate. But sometimes I'll go back and look at what the last sale was, either for a similar unit or for that unit itself, right? And that I could tell by the tax information. It's going to tell me when did they buy the property, right? And it's going to tell me that they bought the property. When did they buy the property? In 2016, right? That's when they bought it for $250. So is it possible for me to determine what the average and median price was of condominiums and townhomes in the city of Lincoln back in 2016? And what is the average median price of a condo or townhome in Lincoln today? And then by doing some math, determine how much the percentage has increased since then. And if you're in my coaching mentoring program, I'll help you with the math. But you take the difference, right? To find the percentage increase, you take the difference. So you would take the current median and average price, and you would subtract what they paid. That gives you the difference. And then if you divide that number by what they paid, that result will be the percent. And so let's say we know that prices have gone up and have gone up by 25%, 50%, 35% since they bought it. We could use that as a factor to determine what their property might be worth now, assuming it's been appreciating just like everything else. Is everybody with me, right, on this? But if you want to sound like you know what's going on, I would know when did they sell their home or buy it, and when did they pay for it, and when was the last time their model actually sold, and what did it sell for, and where is it in terms of being, is it near the same part of the complex? That would be something you'd want to do historically, right? But we don't have any exact matches. Almost always, by the way, when agents suggest properties for me to do a CMA on, it's not easy, right? So anyhow, what we're going to do is we're going to plug ahead, right? Plug ahead, well, anyhow, we're going to hit confirm facts. And by the way, there's lots of good material from RPR on how to do all this, but you don't know, don't argue with it. And by the way, let's say they told us, now in a condominium or townhome, they're not going to double the square footage or do a lot of that crazy stuff that people can do in single family homes. But let's say it was a single family home and we now know that it is 5 bedrooms because they've added on, and we know that it's still got 3 baths, and we know that the square footage is 2,000 square feet now. If we put those changes here, then RPR will use that when they calculate the values. This is a question I've been asked many times by real estate agents, so don't feel bad if you were thinking it. The question I get asked is, if I make the changes in RPR, does that change the public records? Right now, just think about that. The answer, of course, is no, because real estate agents would be changing the public records. It only does it for this analysis. So this is why we want to ask them to describe their house, right? Because if what they're describing is different from what that says, that's where you can put in the numbers, and RPR will start using that to calculate it. But this is a townhome condo. We're just going to hit confirm and go on. All right, so now it's going to let us find comps. Now, notice it says here, add a known property. So if I don't see something that is in the MLS, but for some reason RPR doesn't have it, I can copy that address and drop it in, and RPR will look for it. Now, what I'm going to do, notice how RPR combines condo, townhomes, apartments. They combine them all together, right? Because there's a lot of different opinions as to what makes it a townhouse. I click on active under contract, right? I don't usually do expired, canceled, and withdrawn because we're in a seller's market and there aren't a lot of them. But notice this is showing me where the subject property is. I also, where it says off market date, and off market date means when did it sell, I'm going to probably start January 1st of this year, 3 months maybe, right? Maybe beginning of the year. Now that I've done that, I'm going to draw a shape, and I usually do a radius because I'm lazy, and I might go out a half of a mile, right? Now, if this is a complex, we may not need to go out more than that. Now, by the way, if this were my appointment and I had some time before I did the CMA, I would go take another picture of that property from the front if possible. I would drive around to see where in that development do those townhouses start and end. So for example, I don't know if those properties over here are part of the same sub. I don't know, right? Because I've never been there, but I don't know. Right, but that would be a good thing to know, because what we want to do is look for properties that were built at the same time by the same builder and part of the same subdivision. But this is for educational purposes only. Search in this area, and not a lot came up. Not a lot. So I look up here, 2008 33 1698. I don't expect to see 1698. 1520. We've got 2 of them. Right. If I click on add to comps and I click on add to comps, notice it's using those 2, and what it's basing it on is the dollars per square foot. Now, if I thought that this is really a bigger area, I can, make it bigger, right? Usually an appraiser won't go out more than a mile. And modify the search. Let me try it again. I think I went out too far. Search in this area. No, there's not a lot going on in this area. Those are the 2 comps. That's it, right? Update, valuation, and close. Not a lot to deal with here. And then it's given us that number, create a report. I would do the seller's report, but what you want to do is when you click on it, look at the pages. So for example, some things that sometimes what I will do is it's going to include selected recent market activity. You see that? Now what that is just random properties that RPR has found in the zip code that have sold I don't necessarily think we need to include all that, right? Recommended pricing strategy, I usually don't include that either, right? I don't include that. Seller proceeds, learn how to use the title company app. I don't usually include that. And I delete the plug about how RPR is great, right? And I basically have this kind of stuff. Let me see. I don't see where to input a half bath. We round up. It doesn't necessarily always know the difference between a half bath and a full bath, and it just doesn't always know, right? So it doesn't really, RPR doesn't give you as many refinements as the multiple listing service will. But when we print it out, it's going to show, it's going to show it. Now I could email it directly to the client by clicking there and putting in their information, but I would probably want to be sure. And I'm going to click on Run Report, and RPR is now running the report, right? And then I'm going to look at it, and I might, what title company app do I use? Chicago Title, Fidelity Title, our own, they have the same app because Fidelity Title owns Chicago Title. That's what I use. Old Republic Title, First American Title, all the major title companies have an app on your phone that'll do net sheets. And they'll do it based upon the location of the property, so they know who pays for city transfer tax, or is there a city transfer tax, and who usually pays for escrow and who usually pays for title. They already know that. And so if you use their app that way, and by the way, the apps that I use would allow me to create, I think it's up to 5 different, they'll give you like a variety of prices, like 5 different ones, here's the median, that sort of thing. All right. So, right, we run the CMA Whoopi. How important is that? Not necessarily that big. And by the way, Toolkit CMA, there's also Dash CMA, there's Cloud CMA, and your MLS might give you access to that. I usually just use RPR. What is the investor? What is that all about, right? What is that all about? Now, I don't always do this, but sometimes I do. Right now in the market, because it's such a strong seller's market, I don't always do this. But remember that address. Let me see if I can find it again, right? And I have a program, by the way, that remembers things that I've copied and pasted because I don't like to waste time. And so I'm going to find the property in Zillow. And the reason I'm here, let me just do this again. How about here? All right. And we're going to go to Zillow. There's a reason for going to Zillow. So Zillow is going to give me a rent estimate of $2,250. Now, this is a higher level. Don't do this, don't do this alone at home necessarily unless you've practiced it. But sometimes what I will do is I'll say, well, let's say $2,250 times 12 months is an annual income of $27,000. And let's say I've looked at what are the capitalization rates that investors are expecting to get in Lincoln, and we take the income, we divide by the rate, let's say it's 5%, $540, that's pretty good if they got a 5% cap rate. Now that's, notice, is a much higher number. Now we haven't deducted expenses yet, but what you can do, and if I were really motivated, I would say, what are the property taxes? What are the, what are the expenses that they might have? And I might determine what the value of the property is based upon what are capitalization rates in the area, right? And that's a totally another class for you to figure out what are the capitalization rates in the area. I picked one that's up here, which seemed pretty high given the other numbers, right? But we're not going to spend much time on that. I was asked, what is the program? I use a program called, what is it called? It's called Clipboard History Pro. And if you type in Google clipboard managers, you're going to find a bunch of them. All right. So I put all this together, not because it really means anything. Oh my gosh, what did he just say? Not because it really means anything, but because it looks good. Is that what I just said? I guess that's what I just said. Right, because when they see it, what do most real estate agents do? They bring the CMA. Right? Do they have the list of the automated valuation models? Oftentimes not. Do they know the dollars per square foot in the area? Maybe not. Do they know the tax record dollar per square foot? Maybe not. Have they figured out what the cap rate is or the gross rent multiplier is? And a different class, I'll show you how to do that, although Google might answer it for that zip code. Probably not. Right? So what does a typical real estate agent do? They bring a CMA, right? Which generally looks a lot alike. So this looks different, better than the others. I'm a different, better agent, right? But let's talk about pricing strategies, right? Because none of this really makes any difference if we have the right pricing strategy. And you may have heard me say this last week. This is what I always say, right? There are 3 possible strategies for pricing your home. The first one is that we're having a sales strategy. And this is the one that's going to net you the most money in the shortest amount of time. And in that strategy, we're going to definitely, and by the way, we could change this from 3 to 5 to 30 to 50 offers. Yeah, I haven't updated that recently, but we could, maybe I'll do that right now just for, we could have a, I don't 30, but we could get 10 to 15 offers, right? The other numbers aren't too far off, right, from the current site. All right. And that's really true. I mean, if we do it, if we overdo this, we could get 100 offers. But we're going to deliberately price the property below where we think it's going to end up, deliberately. And we're going to do that because we want a frenzy. We want all of the showings to be blocked on the weekend. We want people nudging each other, fighting. I want to get calls from real estate agents fighting with each other to get access to the property to show it. That's what we want. And if we can create that frenzy, people will be bidding against each other. The more people want it, the more people want it, right? And we're going to get the highest offer. We're going to get non-contingent offers. We're going to get cash offers. They'll be coming out of the woodwork in order to buy your house. That sells the home in the shortest time for the most money. Then there's the Price is Right. And the Price is Right strategy is where we look at all the comps and you look at all of your expenses and receipts and everything that you've ever paid on the property, which is, by the way, what they might have brought in a box of all the things that they've done. And we go through it and we determine what we think the price ought to be. And then we're going to list it for that price and we're going to stick to it. And the reality is that sometimes that doesn't work at all, and we might only get 2 or 3 offers. Then there's the needle in the haystack strategy, graphically illustrated there, where we price the property way above where we think it's going to be, just in case some crazy person happens to wander in and buy it, right? You never know unless you try. Right, but you need to realize that in our market right now, if your home does not sell in the first few weeks, people are going to think there's something wrong with it, right? And what happens when, and I tell people this story, I help real estate agents all the time write offers. And if you call me up and you're one of my people and you say, I'm writing an offer, I need some guidance on how we should write the offer, the first question I'm going to ask you is, how long has this house been on the market? And if you say 5 days, I'll say, were there a lot of showings? Oh, it was crazy on the weekend. So now we have to write an offer at the highest price possible, the most your clients are willing to pay without any contingencies, right, that we could live with. Otherwise, they're not going to get it. But let's say the agent says, oh, this one's been on the market like 30 days. Oh, well, maybe we'll offer list price then, maybe not. And we're going to have appraisal as a contingency and loan as a contingency, and so we're going to have all the contingencies. So I make sure people understand that if they miss that sweet spot in the market, that people will think there's something wrong with the property and it'll dramatically change the way they write offers. And you have to remember that no matter what, how hot the market is, when you're selling your home, this is a combination of a beauty contest and a price war, right? That's what's going on. It's a beauty contest because this is why the way it's staged and cleaned and how it looks, right? That's the beauty contest. And people will be judging the property simply by looking at the virtual tour, the pictures are online, and it's a price war. Because even though it's a seller's market and all that, there's going to be other properties that are going to want to undercut you so that they get the traffic, right? And what we need to do is to market the property in such a way that we are the ones that are getting the benefit of the competition. Now, right now, most of the homes are selling, but I'm going to show you that's probably not always true. But I always say to people, there's two kinds of homes on the market. There are the homes that sell quickly, and then there are the homes that help other homes sell quickly. And what I mean by that is if we price your property at $450, and you've got other ones that look like yours a lot that are very competitive, and they're at $435 or $440, what they're going to be doing is using your home to sell their homes. They're going to be telling people, well, look how much the bargain this one is compared to that one, right? So do you want to have the home that sells quickly, or do you want to have the home that helps other people sell quickly? We have to beat them in the price war. The beauty contest means clean, staged, vacant if possible, available to show on the weekends, no tenant in the property. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. That's the beauty contest. But we also have to undercut some of the competition. Now, sometimes you'll get pushback on the, wow, I don't really think I could, starting at such a low number, that doesn't make any sense. Now, this is something that I take with me. So what I've done is I've gone back to the MLS, and again, your MLS will do this. It just may require that you learn how to use it. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking up the square footage. I'm looking in Lincoln, I'm looking for condos and townhomes, and for a status change date of the last 90 days, there's 10. All right, I'll go with that. All right, usually I'm looking for more, but we got what we got. I'm going to click on that. These are all of the solds in the last 90 days, condos and townhomes in Lincoln. And what I'm going to do is select them all, and I've created an export. Now, if you're using Paragon or Rapatoni or CRMLS, you're able to modify the display fields and then download the display as a spreadsheet. So you can do this. It just requires a few more steps. I've already created one in Matrix called How Much Over? Right? That's what I called it, because I am not good at thinking of names of the stuff. So I'm going to click on it, How Much Over. I'm going to download it. I'm going to open it up. And this is what the spreadsheet, this is what it looks like. All right, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. All right, how about that? All right, so you can see it. Bedrooms, this is street address, which I don't really need. Bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, price, days on market, age. I don't know why. I think when I'm outside of our MLS, this doesn't work very well, right? Out of our major MLS, I just don't know why, but it doesn't always work very well. So maybe there's something in the export. I don't really need that so much. So I type in difference and percent. By the way, if you're one of my people, if you're in my coaching program, if I'm a mentor of yours at EXP, or you're on my production team at EXP, or you're in my coaching program because you're someplace else, I'll actually help you do this when you have an appointment. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the difference between the list price and the sales price, and then the difference divided by the old total is going to give us the percent. And so that is a percent. And I'm going to highlight this because I show it to people. And I'm going to say these are These are the prices. I'm also, this one is dollars, right? And so now that I've done that, I'm going to drag this down and let it go. Now, there aren't, Lincoln townhomes and condos don't have a lot, right? And right now, let me just say this, the condo market is a lot flatter than the residential single-family home market. And that's because people want bigger properties, they want more, and that market is flat. Now, if this was a single-family home, and in fact, let me just find one, let me just find one that I've done, how much over, right? This is one that I've done on a single family home in Silicon Valley, right? And I'll show you how, because it works better here. Difference percent. And this equals the sales price minus the list price. And that equals the difference divided by the list price, and that is a percent. And then when I've done that, I drag it all the way down, right? Because this is what it would look in single family homes. And once I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the percent, and I'm going to sort largest to smallest. And look at that. So this is what it's oftentimes looking like with single family homes. And again, you're going to need to learn how to do this in your area. But what the reason for me doing that is, in this particular market, does it make sense for us to list it low? Excuse me. Does it make sense for us to list it low and then to sell high? Does that actually make sense? Look at this, right? Now I'm dealing with, these are bigger numbers maybe than you're seeing in Lincoln, but look at 25, 24, 20, look at all these that are above 20%. Look at all of the ones that are above 10%. So look how there's some people down here at the very bottom. I don't know what was wrong with them. 51%. I don't normally see that, but notice how most of the properties are selling for above the list price. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because real estate agents may know, well, properties in our area sell for 4% over list price, so that means that we listed at this. You're right. No, that's an average 4%. Some people are getting 25%, and some people are getting 50% less. Now, by the way, if we get rid of those two, right, because there's something, those are outliers, right, you'll see that a few people got less, and a couple of people got what they listed it for, price is right. A couple of people got a little bit more, but look at the ones who got a lot. Now, look at days on market. 3 days, 11, that's a lot, but 1 day, 4 days, 6 days, 1 day, 8 days. You notice that if we go down here, look at the ones where they got 175 days on the market, 21 days on the market, 102. When it says 0 days on market, it means the agent put it in as a comp. And by the way, I oftentimes delete those. 102 days on the market, 129, 31, 30. Does everybody see where I'm going with this? This spreadsheet demonstrates to the owner that people are in fact getting a lot more than what they're listing it for. And by the way, this varies by zip code and city, and you need to run it for the property type and the area that you are. Because I listed homes where I told, like that story I told where it was a 5.3 instead of a 3.1, I told the guy 1.2. And he said, well, what do you think we ought to list it for? And I said, 999,888. And he was like, well, that's crazy. I thought you said we could get 1.2. And I said, we're going to get 1.2, but we should start there. He talked to his son. Of course, they're always geniuses, who said, that guy's crazy. It's not going to work. I showed him a spreadsheet like this, right? And he said, well, it looks like that's what people are doing. We got 1.22, right, when it eventually sold. And by the way, if you're in a market where people are getting things like this above the list price, and you list it where you think it ought to end up, people will wonder, how much do you really want? Right? They say, ooh, you know, he says 3.5. This is actually a property I wrote an offer on. I'm writing offers too, right? We wrote an offer on a 3.9 million, didn't get it. Somebody else bid us, right? You know, there were 26 offers on the one that we wrote recently, but so these are bigger numbers maybe, but the percentages are what are important. And when you show somebody, so if we know that people are getting 10, 20% over list price, and you've listed the home for where you want to be, buyers and buyers agents are going to think, well, they're crazy, right? Because we can't afford to pay that much more than what they've listed it for, right? You understand, if this is the game in the area where people are listing it low so that they could sell high, and you don't play the game, then you might miss out, right? Because people will be wondering, you know, what do you really want, right? It only works in the seller's market. Actually, it works in every market, but you need to know, every market, it is better to list it low so that people can bid it up than to list it high so they can bid it down, right? Does everybody understand that? And I've been through buyers markets. I've been through a lot of markets, and it's always better, and it's even more important in a buyer's market that you undercut your competition, right? That part about some sell and some don't sell, that's true in a buyer's market. But it always works, but you need to know the numbers. The percentages in a buyer's market may not be as great, right? It may not be as great, but so, I mean, like, these are, you have to understand, this is ridiculous. We wrote an offer, the property was 2.8. We wrote an offer for 3.1 something, almost 3.2. There were 26 offers. A million is the numbers I'm talking about. There were 26 offers, and they had multiple offers over 3.5. That's $600,000 over the list price. Look at some of these. Over list price, right? Now, again, I'm dealing with, these are expensive homes, but you need to know in your market where you're doing the CMA, what's going on. Is this what's going on, right? Is it a watered down version of this, right? But you need to know, and you need to be able to look at it and see what that spread really is. All right. And yeah, I do comments. People have asked me, well, what do you do when you're writing an offer? What do you do when you're writing an offer? And I do something similar. I don't do a seller's report. I do a buyer's report. How far back do you go on the spreadsheet? This was just 90 days. If there's enough of them, 30 days. I want to know what's happening right now. And by the way, I'll do another class coming up on statistics. I got a backup offer that I got to send out, so I won't be distracted. I won't pay attention to that. But I'm going to do one on statistics. What's important, I'll just say this, is that you look at where active listings are. Because if we know this, right, if we know what the spread is between listing price and selling price, how do you know what's happening in the market right this minute? Look at the active listings. Because if you know what the spread is and you know what the active listings are, where are their median and average price, you can actually kind of sort of predict what the future sales prices are going to be, right? And that's a different thing. That's more of a statistics class. I don't have time to do everything today, but I will. I like to do statistics classes. I'll do one later. All right, I hope that was enough for you guys, because you warned me out, that's for sure. Right, just wore me out of this whole thing. And again, if you're one of mine, if you're in my coaching program, if you're mentoring, if you're on my production team at EXP, or somebody I'm mentoring at EXP, and you want help, even you don't have to be at EXP if you're in my coaching program, but you want help doing these sort of things, agents are oftentimes sending me addresses, and I help them put together pricing strategies. that's all I got for today. Be safe out there, everybody. And tomorrow there's a class on the loan process. I would check it out. Next week, I'll be doing something else about how to get listings. Talk to you later.